And we now come to the statement on Ukraine. Mr. Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. 2 years ago, we know that Putin thought his tanks would roll easily into Kyiv and Ukraine would fall within days. He did not expect Ukraine's brave resistance, he did not expect his military to let him down so badly, and he did not expect the West to stand so firmly in support with unprecedented sanctions and massive aid to Ukraine to help them resist. Today, Ukraine stands strongly and united, and the international community stands just as firmly in our support. Yet even now, Putin tries to pretend he is winning this illegal war, even though Ukraine has retaken half the territory seized in 2022 and largely pushed the Black Sea Fleet out of Crimea, even though he has failed in his attempts to stop Ukraine exporting grain, and even though, Mr. Deputy Speaker, his actions have united Europe, convincing Sweden and Finland to join NATO and the EU to begin accession talks with Ukraine. It speaks volumes, Mr. Deputy Speaker, about this neo-imperialist bully that he still stubbornly continues despite the cost to Ukraine and his own people. In recent months, Putin sent around 50,000 young Russians to their deaths to take Advika, a town whose pre-war population was just 35,000. We must and will ensure he fails, for this is the biggest test of our generation. Putin's brazen violation of the UN Charter strikes at the heart of the rules on which our security and prosperity depend. And our adversaries, Mr. Deputy Speaker, are watching. Today, we stand at a critical junction. Putin should be in no doubt of where we stand or of our resolve. This is why last Thursday, on the 22nd of February, we announced over 50 new sanctions targeting those supporting his war effort. That includes arms manufacturers, electronics companies, and diamond and oil traders sustaining Putin's illegal war. It brings the total number sanctioned under our Russia regime to 2,000, including banks accounting for more than 90% of the Russian banking sector. Not to mention more than 130 oligarchs who were together worth around £147 billion at the time of the invasion. Last month in Kyiv, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Prime Minister and President Zelensky signed a new agreement building Ukraine's military capabilities and announcing a new wide-ranging partnership, an unbreakable alliance to last 100 years or more. It includes our new £2.5 billion military support package, of which at least £200 million will be spent on a major push to produce thousands of military drones for Ukraine, including surveillance, long-range strike and sea drones. Britain was the first country to sign a long-term bilateral security agreement with Ukraine, as we promised in Vilnius. France, Germany, Italy, Denmark and Canada have now followed suit. Last week, we witnessed time and again how we and our allies share the same conviction, the same determination that Ukraine will prevail. At the Munich Security Conference, the Foreign Secretary made the case for a major uplift in European defence production so Ukraine gets all the firepower and equipment necessary to prevail. At the G20, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Foreign Ministers meeting, it was clear there are few illusions about what Russia is doing. And at the UN, Britain underlined how dangerous Putin's actions are for the entire world. In a call to mark the second anniversary of Putin's barbaric invasion, G7 leaders held a joint call with President Zelensky to mark the second anniversary, renewing our pledge to make Russia pay. And on Monday evening in Paris, the Foreign Secretary urged European partners to do more to show Putin that we will not let him win. All these efforts, Mr. Deputy Speaker, are having a real impact. The European Union has agreed a €50 billion multi-year funding package. Germany has doubled its military aid. And in the coming weeks, we expect several more of our partners to sign bilateral security agreements with Ukraine. And we will keep up and step up the pressure. And there is more we can do. That means ensuring we use sanctions to stop businesses funding Putin's war machine and engaging other countries to do the same. Pursuing all lawful routes to use sanctioned Russian assets across the G7 to support Ukraine, and working with partners to achieve this. And with our partners, giving Ukraine more of the munitions and equipment which will make the biggest difference. More ammunition, and more ammunition at speed. More simple-to-use weapon systems like drones and Soviet-era kit. More support, including through training on F-16s. And more of the systems which have the biggest strategic impact, like Storm Shadow long-range missiles. Through all this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are sending an unambiguous message of our enduring support for Ukraine. A message writ large in blue and yellow last Saturday when we projected the words Slava Ukraini onto government buildings up and down the land and our embassies worldwide, telling Ukraine, her people and the world that the United Kingdom, our allies and people, are here for them for as long as it takes. I cannot end, Mr. Deputy Speaker, without acknowledging the terrible impact of Putin's despotism on ordinary Russians as well. More than 300,000 Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded in Ukraine, many more than in the decade-long Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. The war is robbing Russians of resources that should be spent on pensions or teachers. Indeed, Putin's Kremlin has systemically repressed the freedoms of its own people over the last 2 decades. We saw this most recently and tragically in the death of Alexei Navalny earlier this month, a man who fought with incredible courage to expose corruption throughout his life, calling for free and fair politics and holding the Kremlin to account. The British government is calling for a full and transparent investigation into the circumstances of his death, and the Prime Minister has emphasised we hold the Russian state accountable for its role in his death. We immediately announced sanctions against 6 individuals heading up the penal colony where Mr. Navalny died, following years of mistreatment at the hands of the Russian state. Britain was the first nation to introduce sanctions in response to Mr. Navalny's death, and we are working with international partners to coordinate the next steps. Let me end by reiterating the UK's call for Russia to release all those imprisoned on political grounds, including dual British-Russian national Vladimir Kara-Murza, who is serving a 25-year sentence. The Foreign Secretary will meet his wife and his mother on Friday to express our solidarity and support. And as the Foreign Secretary stated in New York, Putin tries to portray this as a battle between Russia and the West. That is the central lie, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of this war. Our quarrel is not with the Russian people. Our dispute is with those within the Russian state, promoting their aggressive agenda at home and abroad to serve their own personal interests. Britain stands with all those who have fallen victim to Putin's aggression and cruelty in Ukraine and in Russia. I commend, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this statement to the House.
David Lammy.